This is the Wilfrid Thomas Show, edition number 1001. I thought it might amuse you if we remembered some of the listening we've shared in the past, before we start off together towards edition number 2000. An appropriate beginning would be the welcoming call of the Aborigines on Melville Island, north of Darwin. This is one of the first recordings I made. Years later and a world away in Morocco, I was to record a rather similar call. Now, this one was made by excited women from the Atlas Mountains, as their king, Sultan Mohammed V, passed in his golden coach from his palace to the royal mosque, with a cavalry escort and mounted band. King entered the mosque for noontime prayers. Outside, 3 blind beggars squatted in the gutter, asking for alms and chanting from the Quran. Passages from the Quran were being chanted too by small boys in the dim schoolroom round the corner. Here's a 21-year-old who's just starting his acting career. The rock and roll singer who is now starring in a film, Cliff Richard.
My ambition now, I have a burning ambition to be an actor.
Good.
I don't know whether I'll ever be able to make it, but I really have something inside me that I must try at least,
Good.
In fact, the thing that changed my mind about everything, I still want to be a singer, don't get me wrong, I like singing, But I went and saw a film with Burt Lancaster playing the part of Elmer Gantry. And I have never been so stunned and, emotionally moved, and I really have. I've been the same for 5 days. I've wanted to be an actor, and I bought Stanislavski's method acting, and I can't understand a word of it, quite honestly. I find it so hard to understand, but I'm still plodding through it.
Another popular song star, though of an older generation, who kindly appeared in our show for nothing, was Bing Crosby. Have you got a favorite record among all the ones that you've made? Hundreds and hundreds?
Yes, I have. Of course, I naturally, White Christmas has done so much for me. I'd have to be very grateful to that record. But I'd never listened to too many of my records. I don't think they sound too good. But there's one record I really sounded like I might be able to sing a little. It's a title. It's called My Isle of Golden Dreams.
Good.
If I could sing like that every day, I'd be very happy. I just got lucky, I guess, one record. Thank you, Will.
I first met Bing Crosby in Spain during the spring Feria bullfights, and there I discovered a 15-year-old gypsy boy whose singing technique left both Bing and Cliff standing. To make these programs, I've been privileged to work with a great variety of people of many races. Airmen, jazzmen, gondoliers, mountain guides, scientists, bandits, all sorts. One of the very finest gentlemen I've met so far was the late Professor Gilbert Murray. In his study over the mist-wrapped spires of Oxford, he recorded a message for us all. He was 90 years of age, but experience and disappointment had not dimmed his hopeful spirit.
I was one of the founders of the League of Nations movement in 1917, and am still president of the United Nations Association in England. That is, for over 35 years I've been working for this movement. I've been through all the disappointments, and I know the disappointments are not over. Yet I'm convinced that this movement, League of Nations or United Nations, or whatever it may be called in future, forms one of the great turning points of human history. It's on the right lines and shows the one way by which civilization can be saved.
Another distinguished Australian was Joan Sutherland. She'd been playing small parts at Covent Garden with Maria Callas and other stars, and now after 5 or 6 years of preparation, she'd been given her big chance to play Lucia di Lammermoor in Franco Zeffirelli's production. At her flat a few days later, I recorded a conversation with her, and it's amusing to listen again to this part of it, in view of the way she's rocketed to fame in the 3 years since. Well, now the most exciting thing has happened to you. You've been given the most fantastically wonderful and well-deserved press notices. Everybody's acclaimed you as the second Melba, and it's really most exciting, I'm sure. What's happened professionally? Has this had any results?
Well, nothing has been signed yet, but there are letters whizzing backwards and forwards between here and Vienna and Germany, Italy, and even America. And also there's been a bit of a battle between the record companies.
In these programs, we've attended great ceremonies of the Christian Church in Jerusalem, Rome, and Westminster, the canonization of a saint in St. Peter's and the coronation of a queen. We've met popes and archbishops. We were in Ceylon for the Vesak festival of the Buddhists, and in India for the Ramlila celebrations of the Hindus. And in Brazil, we recorded the strange rites of the Macumba cult, when worshippers possessed by the spirits of the dead dance weirdly amid clouds of incense, uttering wild sounds. Some of our recordings were made by people who have since died. It's sad to play again the voice of Mario Lanza, who lived as he sang, passionately, to use his favorite word. We made this in his suite at a Park Lane hotel. He had been ill, but he was looking forward to filming in Italy. I asked him about his training.
Training? Actually, I had very, very little of it. It was all by listening to discs that I really learned how to sing, and listening to the greatest artists who ever lived.
The late Mario Lanza. Is it true that film stars are completely engrossed in self? The answer is in the tape recorder. Jane Russell spends a lot of her time and energy finding foster parents for unwanted children, many of them victims of poverty, war, and famine. Here's part of a conversation we had in Naples, where for so many children, home is in the streets. Jane, I've often thought about it, I've never asked you before, what started you in this humanitarian work that you're doing? After all, a glamorous film star is not really expected to do sort of philanthropic things. What was the beginning for you?
Well, actually, Wolfie, I feel that there are many things wrong in the world, but unless your nose has been rubbed in it, so to speak, you don't really have any dire feeling about going out and doing something about it. Robert Waterfield and I had been married for 10 years, and we didn't have any children of our own, and we decided to adopt, and we thought that would be a very simple matter. And we found out it was not simple at all, that there were many more couples than there were children available in our country and in many countries of the world. And so we looked elsewhere, and when we finally found our children, I was so delighted and grateful, and I had seen so much that I couldn't just stop there. I had to try and do as much as I possibly could to help every child in any orphanage or without parents anywhere in the world find parents, and the parents find the children.
There have been tragic occasions too. We visited the Isles of Greece after the last big earthquake. The ground had opened up and swallowed men and animals. Whole towns had collapsed, burying the people beneath the rubble. Survivors were camping out, and after the first numbness of horror, were building shelters out of the ruins. For the human spirit is not easily crushed. Listen to these young boys from one of the islands, orphaned by the disaster.
Στο προσκοπισμό ήρθα μόνη, να ζήσουμε ωραία ζωή, περνώντας τις μέρες μας όλοι, στο δάση και στην εξοχή. Πού πας, έλα να ζήσεις μαζί με μας, πού πας,
Bring back my body.
Κρέλα τώρα ψευτή.
The most talked of British theatrical producer is Joan Littlewood, who was largely responsible for the present fashion, the low-life plays. I went with her to the last drama festival in East Berlin before they built that wall, and I asked her, how do you create this atmosphere that all the critics praise, this sort of unity of style in acting? What's your approach to the whole business of production? It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is. It's difficult to answer.
Your secrets.
Well, I don't have any really, and I don't much believe in theories, and I think each play has got its own style, and I don't believe in production. That's why perhaps they work together. I throw it all on the actors. They look for the atmosphere of a play and seek it out together and argue it out, and I believe in them.
To make these programs, we've traveled in all the continents and attended many historic events. We've covered music and drama festivals at Salzburg, Edinburgh, Athens, Dubrovnik and other places, the Lady Chatterley trial at the Old Bailey and the Grand National at Aintree. We were on the border during the Hungarian Revolution, at Heiligenblut after the avalanche. We visited the Etruscan excavations at Spina, the salt mines near Berchtesgaden and the Street of Tombs under the Vatican. We turned up at the carnivals on the Riviera and the Basque Country, at art events like the Biennale at São Paulo and the one at Venice. At the World's Fair in Brussels, we went on a pilgrimage to Lourdes and to the last Passion Play at Oberammergau, which takes place once every 10 years. Even less frequent is the Fête des Vignerons at Vevey in Switzerland, 4 times a century. Well, that was a rather idealized wine festival. At Beaune in Burgundy, the focus is frankly on the wine itself, and on the equally splendid food of the province, at gala banquets and tastings during the 3 glorious days every November. At the end, you dance in ancient cellars, in the dim tunnels among the huge barrels and the cobwebs, to the music of the Burgundian hurdy-gurdy. authors are not always fluent talkers. Bengt Danielsson is an exception. He's the Swedish anthropologist who was one of the crew of the Kon-Tiki raft, and he's written many popular books on the South Seas. I met him in Tahiti, in his thatched bungalow beside the lagoon, and he spoke of changes there.
So far, we have lived our own life, a very quiet and peaceful life, and that's simply because up to now Tahiti has been completely isolated. I remember when I came here for the first time, there was absolutely no air service whatsoever. We received our mail by boat once a month, and for instance, when I lived out in the Tuamotu group, we had perhaps one schooner every 2 or 3 months, which meant that it took about 6 months to get a reply to a letter to Europe.
How recently was this?
This was back in '52.
Bengt Danielsson was so enthusiastic about the naturalness of life on the remote Tuamotus that I managed to get there and to live in a village with the Tahitians, where the days were spent in swimming and fishing and the nights in feasting and dancing. It's been an education to meet men of great power. When we visited New Delhi to collect material for the global roundup which preceded the Queen's speech on Christmas Day 1960, Mr. Nehru, Prime Minister of India, made this interesting comment into our microphone.
I have absolutely no sense of frustration in my life. I hope my face shows that. And if you ask me a question, have I achieved all I wanted to, my answer is no. Of course not. Who achieves everything that he wants to? But achievement, partial achievement, comes from time to time, and I find a great deal of interest in work, in the work I do, although it may be irritating and all that. In the final analysis, it's fascinating to face big problems, sometimes even to be knocked down by them, then to get up again and face them again.
In these broadcasts, we try to reflect Australia's interests in the world outside and the world's reactions to Australia. Our concern about the immigration program involved us deeply in the refugee problem, in camps in Germany, Austria, Italy, and Greece. By pinpointing individual cases, we drew attention to the tragedy of the hard core, and the response of Australian listeners was most heartening. Well, I'm in this DP hospital now by the bedside of Mrs. Haratina Boyko, a Ukrainian peasant woman of 42 with a sweet face, gentle blue eyes, graying hair parted in the center. She and her husband and 2 small sons fled before the Russian army in '43 into Germany. The husband was put to forced labor in a sawmill. Mrs. Boyko worked as a cleaner. They lived in a camp. The husband sickened and died. He was only 46. Mrs. Boyko became partly paralyzed. After the liberation, an American mission offered to take the children to the States, but she was too ill to be accepted. Now, those boys are all she has in the world. Boys and a bundle of clothes and a sheaf of documents, including her husband's identity card with his photograph and fingerprints. But she made the gallant decision. She gave her children the gift of a new life in a new land. Well, after they left, Mrs. Boyko began to fight her illness, and she won that fight. She even procured an assurance of work in America, in the same district her boys had migrated to, if she could get there. Then began the wearisome processing, eligibility check, police record, security check, until 2 weeks ago she'd reached the final stage when again she fell ill. She's making a strong-willed recovery. We're bringing her, as a Christmas gift, the voices of her 2 sons. This morning, Stanley Maxted is waiting in the home of the foster parents in Baltimore, USA. Can you hear me, Stanley? Come in, Stanley Maxted.
Yes, right, Wilfrid Thomas. Mrs. Boyko, I don't suppose you can understand me. Perhaps Wilfrid Thomas will get someone to translate. But your 2 fair-haired sons, Paul and Victor, are looking wonderfully well. And before we go any further, kids, just speak to Mother and let her hear your voice, will you?
Hello, Master. This is Paulo. This is Victor, Mother.
Well, now, fellas, Mother's listening over on the other side, so how about telling her some of the good wishes you have for her? Of course, Mamachko won't understand English or German, so you'll have to send your wishes in Ukrainian. Can you do that?
Yes, I think so.
Go ahead, then you first, Paul.
Мамо, бажаю тобі найкращого Нового року.
And you, Victor?
Бажаю тобі веселого свята, дорога мамочка.
And before we go off the air from America, tell everyone, you first, Paul, what are those messages in English?
Martha, Happy New Year.
Victor?
We wish you a Merry Christmas holiday, Martha, darling.
Now, Haratina, Legion, you speak to them. Speak to them. Go on, darling. Say something, sweetie. Come on, darling.
Бог з вами. Мої синочки. Яка я щаслива, що я коло вас. Мені здається, що я на першому році я буду в місті з вами.
God bless you, my son. I am so happy to hear you. I hope to be next Christmas with you, my darling.
Perhaps the most distinguished actor who has recorded for these programs so far has been Sir John Gielgud. We talked together in his dressing room backstage at the Old Witch Theatre. Have you any advice for young actors, Sir John?
Well, I don't know what you can advise young actors. The first is to get jobs, if they can. And
you were very fortunate, weren't you, early in your career?
I was very fortunate. Of course, there wasn't television in those days, and not so many films or radio. But there's more work for actors now. The difficulty is to know, to not to be tempted too much by big money, and to get experience, because the repertory companies and the Vic and Stratford are the best places to learn your business.
A happy memory is of a crazy night in my Mayfair flat when Burl Ives and I let the tape recorder run while we talked and sang and Burl played guitar.
Once a jolly swagman camped by a billabong under the shade of a coolabah. I thought you were coming in this, brother.
Later. Right.
And he sang and he watched and waited while his Billy Boy, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Here, I can have it.
Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. And he sang as he watched and waited while his Billy Boy, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
On came a jumbuck to drink at the billabong. Up jumped the swagman and grabbed him with glee, and he sang as he stuffed the jumbuck in his tucker bag, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
And he sang as he stuffed the jumbuck in his tucker bag, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Up rode the squatter, mounted on the thoroughbred. Up rode the troopers, 1, 2, 3. Where's that jolly jumbuck you got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Where's the jolly jumbuck you got in your tucker bag? You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Up jumped the swagman and sprang into the billabong.
You'll never catch me alive, said he, and his ghost may be heard as you pass by the billabong. You'll never catch me, Matilda, with me. Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me, and his ghost may be heard as you pass by the billabong. You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me.
Pretty good.
That was good. I know. I liked that. I hope the audience did.
Yeah.
This is Wilfrid Thomas thanking you for having me at your place for all these years and for the encouragement you've given me. and hoping that we'll be together for another 1,000 programs, for there are still many wonderful places to explore, and many wonderful people to get to know and understand. And lots of laughs we haven't had yet.